Tobit is the story of two families. The family of Tobit himself, who is the first person narrator at the beginning of the story.
Tobit is a book that was probably written somewhere between the 3rd and 1st centuries BC.
He lives in exile in Nineveh, and he buries the dead Jews left on the streets as a pious action. And it's while doing this pious action that he can't go home because he's unclean to sleep. So he sleeps in the street.
Some sparrows, it says, poop in his eyes, essentially.
Sparrow droppings get in his eyes and he's blinded.
So it just says that he's sitting at the wall. And I don't know how it happens when you're sleeping unless you sleep with your eyes open, but that the poop gets in his eyes.
I know, it's rather charming detail, but I mean, you can imagine it's quite naturalistic in a way.
It develops a film over his eyes, and so he goes to some doctors and says, help me. They try different salves and ointments, whatever, and it just makes it worse and worse.
And he despairs. In his despair, he prays to God. It's a book full of people praying, lots of set prayers. And at exactly the same hour, a young woman, Sarah, is praying to God in her despair in Ecbatana, in another part of the empire, where every time she marries somebody, the demon lover, Asmodeus, kills them. So she's had 7 husbands, and they've all been killed.
An assistant or a helper of the mother blames her, Sarah, saying, it's your fault that they're dying. And so at the same time as Tobit is praying his prayer, Sarah's praying her prayer, God, take my life. I don't want to live.
So she prays, and God hears their prayer, and he sends the angel Raphael to save them. In disguise, he arrives at Tobit's house, where Tobit is looking for a servant to take his son Tobias on a journey to get some money.
If we fast forward a little bit, Tobit sends his son Tobias. He says, you should go to this city in Media, which is another kingdom close to Assyria. He says, you should get this money that I deposited there 20 years ago. It's 10 talents of silver, a large quantity of money.
So off this young boy, Tobias, goes with the servant. On the journey, they come to the river Tigris, and a fish is about to swallow Tobias.
Tobias stops to wash his feet, and a fish tries to eat his foot.
Kill it, says the angel. Take the gall, take the heart, and hold on to them. Those will save your father from his blindness.
And so walking along a little bit, Tobias says, okay, so what do I need these bits of the fish for? And he says, well, fish heart and fish liver are good if they're burnt. The smell will drive away a demon that may possess a man or woman, and the gall is good for a person who's been blinded. It can heal them of blindness, and so you already see sort of it's predicting what's going to happen.
And then they arrive at Ecbatana, and he marries Sarah because he is in fact her near kinsman. He has the right to marry her. And again, the angel tells him to burn a bit of the fish, and this smokes out the demon, who is then taken by the angel to Egypt and bound. And Tobias and Sarah have a wonderful marriage.
Now, Egypt would be sort of a typical place where you'd expect to find demons, one because of ancient Near East associations of Egypt with magic, but also because the wilderness, and that's where you would expect to find demons.
And then they go home, back to Tobit.
They go all the way back to Nineveh. As they approach them, Tobias puts the gall on his eyes, and then he peels off the film, the little cataracts that have formed over his eyes, and he can see again.
In fact, 2 folk stories are being put together. A folk story called The Grateful Dead, from which presumably the rock group take their name, which is all about somebody burying a corpse, and the spirit of the corpse then leads them to riches in a fairy tale way. And the other one is the kind of monstrous bedchamber, or the monster in the bedchamber, this idea of this monster who eats or kills everyone who wants to marry a princess. But in this story, it is all completely theologized. It's like the book of Job. People in despair who think that God has abandoned them are in fact saved by God acting.
It's in the Apocrypha because it wasn't considered part of the Hebrew Bible, that canon. And so certain traditions will say, well, yeah, it's still useful for teaching and for understanding, or at least for illumination.
The whole idea of how the canon is formed is itself interesting. Sometimes it's books that are quoted in the New Testament, and that's how they get in. Books that are late, that exist only in Greek manuscripts, didn't always make it. But this was an immensely popular story, and of course it's in the Catholic Bible. And it's a wonderful story that was endlessly illustrated by artists in the late Middle Ages particularly. Though it's interesting that you see Tobias walking along with his fish, hand in hand with a large angel with wings. So not in disguise in the story. It's as if you see as God sees. You see the action of the angel as the reader does. It's a story about irony. The reader knows God is at work in the story. The characters till the end do not. And yet all the way through they faithfully pray.
It's interesting. It's not very often that you get as much, I guess, angelology and demons running around, especially one that's named. You have Asmodeus, which sounds like a really great demon name. In fact, I think there's a heavy metal band that is named Asmodeus.